Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the Internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes and on YouTube, and on Gary's blog, www.garybaumgarten.com, where you are invited to comment whether you agree with Gary or not. And thanks to our friends on CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated coast to coast across the United States to 12 million additional households. Thanks to Digital Sounds Barnsley in the United Kingdom, and to ASI Radio and TV that have recently joined us to rebroadcast our show. I'm your guest host, Boaz Frankel. That's right, Gary is out today. He is in the field, on assignment. He assigned himself, of course. I don't do that kind of thing for Gary. And your guys are stuck with me, but you're stuck with me, and we have a great guest today, and we have a lot to talk about. We have a very important guest today that's going to give us perspective on the nuclear armaments that are building around the world in specific locations. Folks, I don't know if you know this today, but today is the 64th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which makes it a good opportunity to talk about nuclear disarmament, current nuclear treaties, and nuclear realities, especially in the light of an Israeli military intelligence assessment that Iran will be nuclear capable before year's end. Now, joining us here on News Talk Online on Paltalk.com to talk about these very important issues is Matthew Rojansky, Executive Director of the Partnership for a Secure America. Rojansky organized the signing of a statement about the best weapon against nuclear proliferation. He co-authored a report evaluating U.S. policies to prevent weapons of mass destruction attacks, and is a former fellow at the Center for International Security and Cooperation at Stanford University. Matthew Rojansky, good evening to you, and welcome to News Talk Online on welcome back to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thanks, Boaz. I'm happy to be back.
It's great to have you here, Matthew. Matthew, in just a few words, I would say that looking at today's situation, it kind of feels like we're going back to the days of the Cold War between the former Soviet Union and the United States at the time. And in just a few words, I would say, well, here we go again for round two. How do we keep ourselves from blowing ourselves up as we almost did nearly 60 years ago? And I want to start with specifically your role and task and what you're doing today to try to alleviate that situation.
Sure. I think it's really important, first of all, that we maintain a big picture perspective about what's going on in the nuclear proliferation and the nuclear weapons and disarmament universe, which is that it's not the Cold War anymore. And I think that there's broad recognition on the U.S. side, on the Russian side, from all of the other nuclear powers in the world, that the mutually assured destruction dynamic that basically dominated global security for 4 decades is just not relevant anymore. That said, there is a strange kind of back to the future theme to some of the debate that's going on in Washington today, and that's because we're looking at arms control treaties once again. And that's something that, to be honest, I think that the United States Congress and people here in the United States have sort of lost the ability to do in a serious way. It's been so long since we've had a real arms control and arms reduction agreement, particularly a bilateral one, the U.S. and Russia, that we've sort of lost the ability to do that, particularly in the United States Congress. And so the debate has this very retro quality to it of sort of, we need to have a tough, strong nuclear deterrent, and what are we doing getting rid of weapons and trading something for nothing? And it is really kind of Cold War redux, but it's totally out of place given today's security realities.
Do you think that that President Obama is contributing positively or negatively to this nuclear arm race that we see happening in North Korea and in Iran?
Look, I think President Obama absolutely has his priorities straight. I will give him that. Going back to his campaign, where he talked about moving towards a nuclear weapons-free world, some people would even suggest that he talked about this as a college student in his student newspaper article. I think actually technically he was quoting someone else, but there's no question that he's been thinking about these issues his entire life. And now that he's president, he announced in a very prominent speech in Prague in April that the goal of the United States was to move towards the security of a nuclear weapons-free world. And that's an important phrasing, because there are those out there, many prominent people, who would suggest that a nuclear weapons-free world is a less safe place. It's a sort of in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king argument, which is if the major nuclear powers in the world get rid of their nuclear weapons, then, if a rogue state or a non-state actor is incredibly threatened that they have a single nuclear device, well, can't they hold the entire world hostage? And there are a lot of reasons that that's not the case, but quite frankly, we're nowhere close to a nuclear weapons-free world today, so I think the challenges that we have to deal with, and that President Obama has very correctly identified, are the challenges of proliferation, of more states developing a nuclear weapons capability. North Korea is a great example that you brought up. Look, the Japanese said today on the anniversary of the Hiroshima attack that this is precisely why they are going to stick to their policy of not developing nuclear weapons, and this is even in the face of a direct threat from North Korea. North Korea has launched missiles over the Sea of Japan. It has clearly rattled the nuclear saber. It's tested nuclear weapons twice now, and the big fear there is, well, what if South Korea, what if Japan decide to deploy a nuclear weapons capability to respond to the North Korean threat? Well, then what does China do? Is there a broader East Asian nuclear race which would send that part of the world spiraling completely out of control? And the Japanese, I think, have put a very clear limit on that and said, no, even in response to this provocation, we're going to stick with the six-party talks. We are not going to go nuclear. And obviously President Obama has been a big part of that by doing two things. On the one hand, he is committed to negotiations as the way forward, but on the other hand, he has reaffirmed the American nuclear umbrella over Japan, and he has said as long as there are nuclear weapons in the world, the United States will have the best, the strongest, and the most reliable nuclear arsenal.
We are speaking with Matthew Rojansky, Executive Director of the Partnership for a Secure America. Matthew, let me ask you this. Israeli and German intelligence have assessed that the Iranian regime will have a nuclear weapon by year's end. Number one, do you agree with this assessment? And number two, do you think that who do you think will actually act upon such a threat militarily? Will it be the Americans or the Israelis?
Boaz, I'm not qualified to agree or disagree with that assessment, but I will tell you this. Israel has a set of very serious national security interests in its analysis of the Iranian situation, but they're not the same as the interests of the United States and the interests of other countries in this game. Israel feels threatened in a much more direct way, understandably so. But for that reason, I personally and many others have heard estimates from Israeli intelligence going back to the early part of this decade